Let's do a really quick intro. We kind of sort of half did that, but really quick intro, your name and, program, what you're studying. So Melody, you want to start?
Yeah. So hello, my name's Melody. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Texas, and I'm majoring in physics and minoring in engineering.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a 25 from upstate New York. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm majoring in engineering modified with environmental science.
Hi, I'm Laura Ray. I'm a professor here at the Thayer School. My pronouns are she, her. I teach control theory and mechatronics, and I also serve as senior associate dean for faculty development.
Hey guys, my name is Micah Green. I'm a 25 here at Dartmouth, where I study aeronautical engineering, and I am a part of DBSAA, and yeah.
Hi, my name is Petra Bonford-Taylor. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a professor here at the engineering school. I also serve as the Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion. I teach classes in programming, embedded systems programming, also environmental engineering, and some math.
Hi, I'm Vicki May, she, her. I teach mechanics-based courses and intro to engineering.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrienne Gowie. I am a rising second-year student, PhD student at Thayer, in Dr. Ian Baker's lab studying material science and engineering.
Hi, everyone. I'm President Beilock. Just finished my first month.
Yeah. How's it going?
Really great.
And Alexis Abramson, she, her pronouns, Dean here. So good to get everybody together. So as Leah mentioned, looking forward to sort of engage in a discussion around diversity and inclusion in your experiences and as it relates to engineering for those of you who have had those engineering related experiences. Let's start our discussion on this really important topic with President Beilock. So if we think about your time here, your short time here, right? There are many firsts. One, you're the first woman president of Dartmouth since its founding, but just as importantly, you really bring significant experience and leadership in higher education, now as a college president, previously as a college president at Barnard, as vice provost and professor, and as scientist and researcher. So you've had quite a few roles in leadership, and maybe you can talk about how those roles have shaped you as a leader. And how you would sort of describe yourself as a leader now.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think something that I bring to what I do as a leader is really embracing that I have multiple selves. I'm a president, I'm a researcher, I'm a mother, I'm a woman. All of those things come into what I do. And I think oftentimes leaders really only want to focus on the fact that they are in a leadership role. But I think all those different aspects of myself are important to who I am and how I lead. And we know from psychology research that having these multiple selves can actually be really important. When I have a horrible day as a president, I can go hug my daughter and feel better. And when I'm a horrible parent, which happens all the time according to my 12-year-old, I can really think about some of the other things I do. And so I bring this perspective that having many dimensions of yourself is really important for your own health and well-being, but also important for how you think about the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great that you bring such incredible perspectives, and we think about our faculty and staff and student who also represent many diverse populations, various backgrounds and experiences, cultures that they bring when they come to work and they come to school every day. How can Dartmouth lead to help us all work together to solve the world's current and future challenges?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, the data are really clear that the best ideas come when you get people with different perspectives and different lived experiences at the table feeling like they belong and they can push at each other. So I talk a lot about creating what I call a brave space, a space where we feel like we can make mistakes, where we feel like not everyone has to think the same way we do, where it's okay to have very different points of view and still be close with someone. I think Dartmouth can really be a leader here. One, because of our size and scale, we're tight-knit. We do this across faculty, students, and staff. And another, because we attract such great students from all over the world and help them be here, regardless of their means. And I think this notion around embedding a brave space in everything we do, from in the classroom to the research lab, really can make Dartmouth stand out.
Absolutely. Maybe turning to Micah, one of our engineering majors, can you share, building off what President Beilock has shared, can you share maybe some examples from your own experience at Dartmouth or in your life where diversity and sort of taking advantage of the amazing community we have here at Dartmouth has influenced you and what you're choosing to do?
I think one example outside of football, because I told myself I wouldn't talk about it too much, would be my Engines 33 class. So for that class, we had to construct a wooden bridge and test force loads in the middle of the bridge. For my group, I had a person from Canada, a person from Germany, and then myself being from Indianapolis. I'm kind of the Midwestern person. So I guess that group was very fun because, again, we had two foreigners or international students, and when they would talk to us about even stuff outside of the project, just like life in general, like how the day was going, what they do. Like one of them's on the skiing team, one of them's also on the football team with me. So it's just funny to hear their perspective on like just topics outside of the class. And even then, the fact that their first time in America is up here in Hanover is definitely a challenge. So we would talk about stuff like that, and I thought that their perspectives of living in Canada, living in Germany were very beneficial for me, because being from Indiana, I'm very used to seeing structure like in the traditional way. Like I went to public school, I did a lot of programs throughout middle school and high school, so I just felt like it was kind of normal for me to be in this type of setting. So it was definitely interesting to hear their perspective on this project and life in general at Dartmouth.
And how was your bridge? Did
Our
it
bridge,
withstand the weight?
It definitely stood the weight, yeah. We had to hold 1 kilonewton, and we held 11, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Abby, how about you?
I would say one of the experiences that comes to mind is my time in Engines 21 with Professor Vicky May. I was able to be in a cohort of 4 of my peers who were all women in a project that we did on rural cooking methods and improving access to those rural cooking methods through a stove that reduces smoke output. And so being on that team of all female peers was something that I was super excited about in the engineering classroom, and something that I hadn't encountered in my other experiences with engineering prior to coming to Dartmouth. And I found a great community of my peers in that project as well. And something that I've really tried to push forward is my experience in the Society of Women Engineers. So in May, we put forward an event called Women in Engineering Day, which was actually something that was sparked from an experience I had in middle school back home in upstate New York at SUNY Canton. And I've always loved math, and I thought that was something that I wanted to do. And then when I was in middle school, I ended up attending this event, and I saw this great community of female engineers who were excited about talking to one another about their engineering projects, but also outside of that, just how they were doing in life and how they felt included in the spaces that they were in and what could be improved. And so we had students from middle school to high school come on one Saturday here at Thayer, and we put on different activities in structural engineering with the spaghetti challenge, and we talked about polymers with slime. And I did that with a cohort of my female peers and also male peers at Dartmouth in the Thayer engineering program. And that was just a really impactful experience to be able to give back to the community that I was able to benefit from, and feel like I could be a leader while also working together as a community to find collaborative solutions to the challenges that are most pressing today.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. And Vicky, then, as a professor of Engines 21, which is our introduction to engineering class, and that Abby participated in, and if I'm not mistaken, your team won an award, right? They were the Jackson Prize winners, which is pretty awesome. So every term in Engines 21, we pick a winner of all the many projects. So Vicky, maybe when you think about all of the teams that you have overseen over the years, right, how has diversity played a role in the team effectiveness or the actual product that they end up building?
Yeah, so I would say the more diverse teams definitely have better projects. And Abby's team was all women, but it was diverse on a lot of other scales. And I think that was part of the reason you were so successful. I don't know if you agree with that, Abby, but from different countries, different backgrounds, some had human-centered design experience, some were totally math geeks, but it fit together.
I would also say, just off of what President was saying, I would say that we came in as all women, and I think that fostered a kind of comfort that was really welcoming to bringing our different positionalities to the conversation, to the table. And we aren't just because we're just women, that doesn't mean that we also don't have all these other backgrounds and experiences.
So I think that's important, and it's something I try to engineer in my teams. So I often say I didn't need an engineering degree, I need a psychology degree, but I do try to get to know the students and figure out what their interests are. And I found the teams that have common values and interests work, but then diverse on a lot of skill sets and tools and the way they look at problems. And I stole that from Scott Page's book, Difference, who says the same thing. But I had kind of discovered them like, oh, good, that's okay. If they have wildly different values, like somebody really wants to work on something biomedical and somebody's really interested in something else, it often doesn't work. So I do try to match interests, but then diversify, especially on the skill set. So we get a lot of students these days coming in with CAD experience or machine shop tinkering experience. It's good to mix those in so evens the playing field a little bit.
Great. I find too, oftentimes we know as humans encountering engineering stuff every day, a lot of times it doesn't quite work, right? And one of my favorite things to point to is how long it took us to put wheels on suitcases. Like, why did that take so long, right?
Because women weren't in charge. Yeah.
So having these diverse teams, right, helps you identify the real needs of the humans and come up with solutions in a lot more of an efficient and effective way. So,
and I think it's not just from the research and my experience as a leader, it's not just having different people at the table. It's really creating an atmosphere where you feel like you can say, no, I don't agree with you, or I don't think that's the way to do it. I'd love to hear from some of the students who took this course. Did you have experiences like that where you had to negotiate and go back and forth to get to the right outcome?
I can talk about that. I mean, now I'll bring in football here. I feel like me and my teammates, we have conflicts every single day. We like to talk about controversial issues, and a lot of people have different political views and social views. So it's ultimately good to hear different perspectives, but I will say like conflict is really what drives change the most. We never really agree with each other, and that's why we become a lot more closer and we find solutions to problems that need solutions. I feel like just having somebody that opposes you and just being willing to challenge them and talk things through is really what's most important in growth, because when you don't do that, people don't listen and they don't understand the other side of things.
And your ideas don't get better, right? I mean, you don't have to agree in the end, but having to try and convince someone else of your point of view is such a good exercise in understanding how you think about an issue as well.
100%.
Yeah, and I think it goes to this idea that it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. Like, that's how you learn and change. And for all of us, I'm uncomfortable constantly, but you have to lean into it somewhat, because that's how we get better at things. And I think it's really important to have our professors and our leaders talk about that. Like, oftentimes students think like, oh, your path was just linear to where you got, and you knew what you were doing. Like, I can tell you, I had no idea what I was going to do when I was in college. I had like 8 different majors my first year. I had no idea. And I think we often perceive people who are in positions of power as sort of having it all, knowing what's going on. And I think that is really one of the ways that leaders fail, is when they don't have people who are pushing at them, who are saying, no, I don't believe in your idea, or you need to look at this or that, and they're not listening. They can ultimately make a particular decision, but it's that kind of input that leads to the best outcomes. And when leaders put blinders on and only have people around them that are agreeing with them, you certainly aren't getting where you need to go.
Yeah, I think like also in terms of incorporating like a diverse leadership, it's also important to have people from underrepresented backgrounds, because I think you have to be very aware of contextual like cues, and some people may veer more towards agreeableness. So even though they may have a challenging thought, they may feel uncomfortable voicing that. And I think like I definitely agree that it's important to create a space where we challenge what people have to say, and we have those things, but at the same time being aware of that, and incorporating it also in your leadership style is very important, I think. At least like for me, I think I usually veer towards agreeableness. So I'm very mindful of that when I step into leadership positions, and I make sure to incorporate like different ways for people to voice their opinions, maybe like staying a little after the meeting and like chatting to someone one-on-one, or like if you see a newcomer in like a group project or a club meeting, going to the corner and like saying hi, and like just making sure that people feel comfortable and have different ways of voicing their opinions, I think is really important.
I love that, Melody, by the way. I think it really makes clear like the onus is on the leader to get the best out of everyone. And that means there's not just one way to do it. So for me, for example, when I'm going to have a senior team at the table talking about something, I often pull people who I know might not be as likely to talk in the meeting ahead of time and ask them for their opinion, or I'll send them an email afterwards. I think it's really the leader's responsibility to figure out how to get the best out of everyone, and it's not just one size fits all. So I love the ideas that you're espousing here.
That really reminds me of my experience as a trip leader at Dartmouth for our first year orientation. And I've always thought that the best leaders are not the ones that are facing forward in front of the group, walking steadfast ahead. It's the people that are behind with their arm around someone, leading the way, and navigating that as a group. And so I would say when there were times when these really excited but super nervous brand new Dartmouth students on this sunny, like sleepless September week of orientation, we're just trying to navigate these new experiences and relationships, and also hike the Appalachian Trail for 3 days and sleep under a tarp and get rained on. It was the times when I was able to go back and talk to the students that were a little bit quieter or reserved and make sure that they were feeling included and excited about taking on that journey, and then to ensue their Dartmouth experience in the Dartmouth fall of their freshman year.
That sense of belonging,
Yeah.
which I think we are working on, will always be working on, right? How do we better make everybody feel included and that they belong, is so important to their own success and to the success of whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Adrienne, go ahead.
I wanted to actually make a comment on belonging, because this
Great.
is actually the first time I've moved away, even though I did an undergrad degree and a master's degree before this. I think Dartmouth and Thayer makes an excellent effort to make sure that everyone feels included. And I also want to say, out of all the many schools I've been to at this point, I love that there's so many women. I never feel, previously, I used to be the only woman in any given room coming from like a mechanical engineering background. So it's nice to just be surrounded by other females and other ideas, and it's just very encouraging and uplifting. And I definitely can say that almost 1 year being here, that I feel very united in community here. So that's
wonderful
really
to
nice.
hear. And now you're doing the PhD program with Professor Baker. And from a research perspective, right, research being one of those areas where we really need diverse perspectives, right, digging in, trying to solve the world's problems. Can you talk a little bit about research and the importance of diversity in research?
I would say, of course, I love being in Dr. Baker's lab. I think his lab is the biggest group that we have at Thayer. And there's a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, so it's nice to incorporate different ideas. If I'm having an issue completing a task, I can ask any one of my peers to show me how to maybe like mill a powder or something like that, analyzing a sample, which were all new things to me going towards like a more materials focused major here.
I always thought that graduate school was about figuring out who around you could help you do things, because you can't do everything yourself. So it's like figuring out how you have, as a cognitive scientist, I talk about it as distributed cognition, like your brain and everyone's brains are what lead to an outcome. And so maybe you don't have to be the expert at milling a powder. I don't know what that is, but there's someone who can help you. And the idea is, how do you figure out how to rely on those people around you so you can get to the best outcome?
Yeah, I would say collaboration is definitely the biggest part of graduate school, because no man is an island. And I've realized that if I don't ask questions, I'm not going to get that much done.
So true. And that's something I think that probably if you're doing your PhD here, you don't know what it's like to do your PhD elsewhere, but it's something that we so encourage. We have a lot of shared resources here, and a lot of collaboration across departments too, and really encouraging that, helping to, in many ways, make our community feel a lot stronger, sort of together in all these different ways. So Petra, you are leading our new strategic planning effort around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you're hearing a lot of these comments around the table. I'm curious what sort of rings true for you when you hear these comments. What have you, going through this process now, been experiencing and can identify as being so critical to integrate the role of diversity into all that we do here?
So everything rings true. It's wonderful to hear all the voices basically echo what we're trying to work on and have been working on. I love the feeling of belonging, which is one of the most important things we're working on. It's the culture that we need to build. So in order to then support the diversity that we want to see around the table, we can't just bring diversity in and hope for the best. So we really need to prepare the ground and have the entire community ready to support a diverse community so that everybody can feel like they belong and everyone is a part of a team. And so this is hearing the voices of diverse teams and experiences on diverse teams, feeling included in the research group, working together as a community. It's really wonderful to hear. So I speak from a lot of experience myself, having come from an international background and having seen a lot of different ways of doing things and bringing those different ways together. In my former life, I was a mathematician, as you know. And so I have seen a different style to approach problems. And I can now compare these two different styles of approaching problems, more like a working on your own, making sure it's perfect before you talk to anyone about it, versus collaborating, giving it a try. And even those diverse perspectives help in making sure everybody can feel included, because not everybody thrives from the same methodologies. And so having an international background, a different academic background, really helps in bringing together everyone at a table so we can all have the best experience and do work and research and learn to the best of our abilities.
So a follow-up from that, we're thinking about changing our approach to undergraduate education, as we all should be. As time moves on, we think about undergraduate engineering education and what we need to be doing differently as the world changes. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the future of undergraduate engineering education and what you're working on. Vicki, feel free to chime in as well.
So I try to take a lot of inspiration from how I learn best. And how do I learn best when I have a new car, for example? Do I really read that entire manual first and then start driving the car and remember everything I just read? Or do I get to the gas station and don't know where the gas cap is or how you open the gas cap?
Experiential learning.
Experiential learning. So that's how I learn. When I go to the gym, do I study first how a squat works, or do I watch other people and then do it wrong and have myself corrected? So I watch my own kids, how they learn. I watch what's the differences in my own children. And so having seen all of those things and over the years and having taught in a very traditional way and slowly become a more active teacher has given me a lot of perspective on how we can be more inclusive in our teaching. And so with our amazing team, we're developing this new pathway into the major that incorporates the math in a just-in-time fashion rather than in a just-in-case fashion. And so the math is introduced in an engineering context. Hey, this is why we're going to need this math concept. We're trying to build this bridge, and we need to measure we need to predict how strong it's going to be. Well, how are we going to do that? What do we need to know? And so the math to be introduced in a context is going to be much stickier in your brain than something that's front-loaded. And so that's really where we're going for with this new pathway.
I love that. I mean, and it follows so well from psychology research showing that when you have some sort of idea about why you're learning something, you remember it better. And there's a classic passage about this or experiment about this where people read this long passage about this thing you have to do, and you have to do it all the time, and it involves sorting and everyone's super confused about what this is and they can't remember it. But if you tell them ahead of time that it's about washing clothes, you give them a schema or some, then all of a sudden everything they're reading about, they can plug into that file drawer and they remember it better. And so what you're talking about is exactly what we would predict from psychology, that having some idea and direction and purpose for what you're learning can be helpful in terms of how you understand it, how you remember it, how you apply it, and how you make meaning.
Good. Laura, maybe we can turn to you. You've been here how long at Thayer?
Oh, 27 years and change.
27 years. So you have seen a lot of change, right, at Dartmouth, at Thayer, as has happened around the world. Can you talk a little bit about your experience as a faculty member here and how diversity has played a role?
Sure, that's pretty easy. So when I came to Dartmouth, 1996, am I dating myself? We had a woman dean. In fact, I think she read between the lines of my application. I had been in a position where it was an undergraduate only institution. I had 2 children, and I was just looking for that one magic place that I could spend the rest of my career. I was one of 3 women on the faculty plus the dean at that point, and I thought, okay, 10%, that's about what my undergraduate class size was in terms of number of women, and it wasn't as collaborative back then for me, and I had to find my collaborators over time, and I did. And I couldn't imagine, actually, when I started, what I might be doing. I couldn't have predicted what I've been doing 10 years down the road because I found those collaborators. And they really did help shape my career at that point. Over the time, we hired more women. We've seen a really significant growth in diversity of our student body, including the recent, decision to and means to provide support to international students, financial aid. And I think as I've sat back and thought of all this happening, I thought, well, my own college experience has played a role also in how I advise, how I teach, and so on. So I was a first-gen student. I walked into my first physics class not very well prepared at all. There wasn't a Dartmouth Emerging Engineers to help, so you had to figure it out on your own, kind of in isolation, which was very difficult. Persevered through that, and it was almost by accident that I actually even went to college. But now, as I'm in this position, and I often have advisees who are also first-gen students, and they are in these very difficult prerequisites, and they're struggling, and I tell them the story. You know, the first midterm in physics that I failed. And I also say, you know, some of your classmates, they've taken calculus in high school over 1 or 2 full academic years, and you're compressing that all into 10 weeks. And they say, oh, I get it. And I think it gives them that boost of confidence. It's not them. It's really, the time span and what's being demanded of them. If we could create an engineering program and had all the resources in the world, how would we do it? And I've often thought, well, it would be more of an apprenticeship. You know, you work with someone, a student or 2 or 3 students, and they master something to some level, and then they move on. And there's no grades. There are no checkpoints where they somehow feel that anxiety, stress. It's just you learn how to shoe the horse, and then you move on. And so one of my classes that I teach, the mechatronics class, I kind of do that as best we can. It's really such a delight to watch them work through this and get the aha moments on the way.
I'm sure some of them have never really used their hands, or maybe they took Engines 21. And
well, yeah, so they have some project experience, but to take the sort of deep math that they're learning and now have to make this mouse, this micro mouse, this mechanical thing, find its way through a maze is quite a different thing than a simulation piece of software that you might do in another type of class.
I also wanted to sort of talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. Obviously, this conversation is happening just a couple of weeks after that decision. By the time this article comes out, we might have more clarity then on what that decision could mean for us here at Dartmouth. But President Beilock, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the values and core principles around diversity that you lean on, that you feel Dartmouth should be kind of focused on as we navigate this complex decision and the impact that it might have.
First, I think it's important to point out that people can have different points of view about the Supreme Court decision, and that's okay, and those views exist on our campus. And so part of my goal as a leader is to create a big tent where we can have those conversations. That's really important. But aside from that, or above and beyond that, what I want to underscore is that diversity of thought and lived experience, which also includes racial diversity, is key to what we do on our campus. And we will continue to look for ways to recruit the best and the brightest students, to support them so that they can be successful. And of course, we'll comply with laws and rulings, but I think what it does is it puts the onus on us as an institution to be even more creative in terms of how we go out and build our class and how we ensure that we get those diversity of perspectives and lived experiences at the table. And so that is really what I was trying to communicate, that it is okay to have different views on the case. It is okay to feel differently about it. It is okay for that to happen on campus and for us to talk about it. But what is non-negotiable in my mind is that a diversity of lived experience, a diversity of thought, diversity of people leads to better outcomes. And we are an institution focused on academic excellence and impact. And so as part of our mission, we have to continue to ensure that we have those differences around the table, that people feel like they belong, that people feel like they can have different opinions, push at each other to get to the best answers.
Well, it's, I think, of all the decisions of the court this term, it's very sad in my mind. But on the other hand, it gives us another, I don't want to call it a problem, but so we have to determine other methodologies, and maybe it's an opportunity to come out the other end even better, more diverse than we are now.
And Petra, I've heard you talk about our strategic plan around DEI and how, to Laura's point, it's going to be better for everyone. Maybe you can just say a few words about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the measures that we're implementing, they're going to benefit a large group of people and not just individuals that are singled out because of some aspect of their identity. And so many of the things that we're addressing in our strategic plan, almost all of them will benefit large groups of people. We all want to feel included in our work. We all want to feel like we belong when we work here. Our strategic plan is moving forward as planned because it's going to cultivate that diversity of opinion, diversity of thought, diversity of lived experience, and really make that central. It's not about checking a box somewhere.
Great, thank you. So at Thayer, we take a human-centered approach to engineering, and that means we really focus on the needs of the people, of society, of the planet at our center of the education that we deliver and the research that we do. And often that also calls us to think about more than just the science or engineering, but who and what is really at the center. What are their needs? And also who and what might we be forgetting, those unintended consequences as well. So maybe we can talk about the future, the bright future ahead, and what that might look like, particularly when leaders and decision makers include more insights and voices of the people around this table, the people in our community, and the people in the world. So anybody want to kind of chime in about what you see as the future? Melody?
Yeah, sure. So I think like a lot of the most pressing issues that affect our society are super complicated and like they don't have one tangible root cause or one solution either. So having a diverse body of people in leadership allows us to tackle these like complex issues through different lenses and address like the many different ways in which they intersect and how contributing issues may lead to more, and yeah, just looking at the problem through different angles can help out.
Yeah, I agree that with a diverse range of perspectives and a breadth of epistemologies serve to be valued. And I would say my experience with the Dartmouth Energy Justice Clinic has been really exciting. So at Dartmouth, we really value the liberal arts education curriculum. So I'm able to study engineering and my energy focus, as well as explore the geographical and anthropological aspects of the energy transition. And just as energy issues are changing rapidly, so too are issues of access. And so in that clinic through Irving, the Irving Institute at Dartmouth, we're able to speak with community members, speak with Indigenous leaders locally and abroad, and work with my peers and well-renowned practitioners and researchers to consider the non-technical aspects of the energy transition in juxtaposition with those my perspective as an engineer. And so that's been really exciting to value that multidisciplinary cohort of my peers and leaders.
I just want to point out that this is the kind of group in which problems get solved. I don't know any other institution in the country that would bring undergraduates and PhD students and professors and the dean and the president together to have a conversation about this. And this is, I think, an example of what makes Dartmouth so special, that faculty work with students, that we're thinking alongside each other. And it's a perspective of different generations that comes together to impact what we do as well, which I think is pretty cool.
So maybe we can end on a follow-up to what you just said around Dartmouth and how Dartmouth's future can work harder to consider more diverse perspectives, as you've already mentioned, but particularly in the role of science and engineering and innovation, right? And so when you think about the future of Dartmouth, right, what are some of the things that we could be doing to make the world a better place?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm here, because I see a really powerful institution that can do even more. As I think Melody said, there's lots of really sticky problems that we're dealing with and lots of opportunities and challenges in our future. And those challenges are going to be solved at intersections. It's not just mathematicians sitting in a room by themselves. It's not just humanists. It's people thinking in a human-centered way about how we work to make our planet sustainable, how we think about income inequality, how we think about international security, how we think about everything from digital health to bioengineering. And I really do believe that Dartmouth's size and scale makes us especially well poised to be a leader on a lot of these intersectional challenges.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you being here today and participating in our conversation. I think more conversations to come, because these are really critical to help us all think how we can work together to make Dartmouth even stronger and to have even greater impact on the world. So thank you.